Welcome to another exciting lecture. I know you guys have been waiting patiently for this one. So we're going to start talking about the cognitive process and modeling and framings and about how we think about interfaces. This will be important in our scientific journey together. Particularly, we're going to start looking at mental models and the cognitive frames that we produce when we're actually creating these ideas. What we need to think about for users first. When I say cognition, I mean human cognition, because we're dealing all the time with users. Hefner 2004 was one of the studies you guys can look up too. It was a study on human interactions, and in particularly technology and innovations. And this is one of the fields that I love, because that's where my doctorate was from. I looked at languages and innovations. Particularly, I looked at the digital native group and the millennials, you guys, on how you interact on a daily basis with technology and innovations to discover, create, and make up new languages. Whether or not you know it, you guys have created a series of languages. And it keeps getting deeper. You also have semiotics and signs and symbols that we don't see every day, but your group of individuals, your culture, are changing the way we think and act and interact with innovations just because of the languages you've created. And if you think about it, most of the terms and people out there will say, well, I'm a multitasker. Well, let me ask you this. Did you guys see the recent report of a man who was multitasking in your age group while texting while walking and walked off a cliff? Yes, we actually have the first person to pass away while trying to multitask on their smartphone. Doesn't seem so smart today. So a lot of these behaviors are the things that I looked at and I still look at as a scientist. Are we being effective? Are we using technology to the best uses, or are cognitive representations what we actually want them to be? So I look at behaviors, and especially the multitasking behaviors, and find the association levels to where you cannot actually multitask when you think you are. So through this lecture, we're going to talk about a couple different things. And again, our friend Norman, you can look up, and I strongly advise some of his YouTube pieces are pretty cool. And he'll talk about experimental actions in the cognitive process, how we perceive something or an act, and versus the reflective of how we actually compared those decisions on things we've done before. We do this in interactive design because, one, we like to associate things we know. We've already learned. We use our models to create an ease. Those metaphors are things like we've talked in the past about the trash can on computers, right? Well, everybody knows what it looks like. The Macs have the trash cans. Let's see if we can escape and see if we can see my little guy right there. Well, they're associated because we know that if we put it in the trash, it's going away. These are some of the most interesting techniques, and Norman really looks at the way we reflect back and we use this memory models that we've created, these cognitive representations and everyday life metaphors in the computing industry to make it simpler. And we're going to look at these and how you can adapt and overcome, and I'll talk about at the end a solution I came up for a police department to help them. So cognition, one, is you've got to be attentive. You've got to have this idea in your mind for a goal in your task as a user. Once you have that, there's a perception of your needs. You use your memory and your learned skills and your problem-solving skills to get to those points. But if the interfaces are confusing or distracting, it creates gaps or junctures or bridges we can't cross, which we're going to talk more about. Attention essentially is that process of selecting. It's a range or scope of what we are able to do. How many of you right now are actually paying attention to me? You're already wandering, aren't you? Well, I'm giving you auditory and visual senses here. I have motion designed inside, so you constantly look and think about what I'm talking about. I might flash it back and forth. It's to keep your attention here too. I have a goal of keeping you on track. You're probably multitasking. Maybe you're taking notes. Maybe you're watching a video on YouTube. You're looking at your text on your screen. So I want to ask you this. I had a number series up there. How many numbers can you remember? Can you remember any of them? Were you multitasking? Were you paying attention? Your group says that you can. Your culture says we can do multiple things at once. Well, if you can, you'll be able to remember all those numbers. Here, let's look back. Oh, enough time? I don't think so. When I was growing up, multitasking was thought as a negative aspect, and it still is today. It's becoming back around. we look as scientists as how many actions and functions on an interface can you handle. We'll talk about a rule for that as well as develop scientifically on the rule of 7. You'll see a lot of times on my screens I never go over 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's because it helps you. We have a cognitive association. This is enough. My mother always said, you can't chew bubble gum and walk or ride my bike or do something, and I would try to counter her thoughts, of course. Whoops. Sorry, gang. And I would say I can. I remember distinctly as I was about 6 years old riding my bicycle. I tried to make a turn. I was looking at my baseball mitt, my glove, not trying to drop it while chewing bubble gum, and I rode right off the road and off a cliff about 15 feet down and got injured pretty bad. Lesson learned. Digital natives think they're multitaskers. They'll have 43 screens up, but nothing is taken in. You cognitively can't stand the load and remember these things. So this is one of the things we'll have to think about in interface designs, because we always want to add too much. What is the presentation of information level? How much attention for a task do you have to have? Is the data clearly presented? Is it being perceived? How much information is acquired from the environment? That's always a difficult one to think about. Environments are rich with what? Distractions. Remember, you were supposed to be paying attention to me, and you guys were already wandering off when I took a breath. I did that on where'd you go? You're supposed to be here. I gotcha. Let's take a look at this. What do you see? Have you ever seen this? How many of you see a young woman? How many of you see an old lady? How many of you see neither? Let me point it out. If you look at this face, on this side, here's a neckline. Here's a young woman with a hat and bow on. If you look down here, what do you see now? Can you see the difference? This is a mouth. How about if I point that out? Here's a chin. Just look at the white areas. Here's a nose. Here's 2 eyes. Now do you see the older lady with the hair coming down, the hat backwards? Oh, yeah, it's a little different how we see things and perceive. So we have to think about the cognitive recognitions of how people are seeing what we think they are seeing. Think about data in a chart. I borrowed this off the internet, but look at how this interaction flow chart on a modern data architecture comes from this group. The idea is clarity. Is this clear? I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all these little interfaces. It seems too distracting to me, even though it's sort of simple. It's got color code variants. It's got arrows telling me where to go. What do we have first as a problem in this recognition? Well, one, where I'm from and where most of you are from here in Georgia or surrounding areas, we read left to right. We think top to down. This one's going from bottom up, almost right to left. So it has a cognitive problem already from how we see things. So design implications really can change and hurt the way our users use the interface in designing the way they want to get to their goal or task. What should we do? Icons. Well, we already understand visual metaphors and how the meaning associations can grab attention and clarify meaning of the actions of the user. We can also use design bordering space. Notice how I left a little extra space here. It tells you there's a transition, but when I crowded them into this area, you don't see the break in thought, do you? I did this on purpose. So bordering a space is a visual freedom for the eyes. It gives you direction and flow. We know there's a bullet, there's freedom, it says change. So this would essentially be a bad design that I did for you, correct? We want to link all this material together. Versus here's sound, established connotations, right? Beep, that means stop. We usually understand that computers. Or text is another style. Differences in text, bolding for clarity and color for don't do, red, stop, directive, go. And always feedback. We always want to get that constant feedback from our users. But when you do little things like this, it makes a giant difference in our design implications. From going from this is all the same information to this is separate to this to wow, we really should have had space here for just our design. Bailey came up with the idea of the rule of 7. 7 menu options, 7 icons on a bar, 7 bullets, 7 tabs, 7 items. It's very interesting because we found that this is a cognitive load when they scientifically measured it, to where we're acceptable and we enjoy a screen, we like it. Miller's theory on chunking, which was basically putting things together in a like menu or a bar, helps us have visual representation and memory. It helps us learn how to use the interface faster. And more importantly, if we change it, if we carry those cognitive representations over we've already learned, it helps you remember more and learn easier, learn interfaces faster. Remember our numbers? No, you don't. But it's interesting, if we carried those numbers over on every single page, you would be learning a lot of them by now. So what are design implications? 1, don't overload your users. Their memories can only hold so much. Promote recognition through icons, metaphors, similar ideas, similar colors to transcend through. If you noticed, I kept all this the same on the topic heading, so you know it's a new topic. I've used bullets to point out different perspectives, and I've intended every time I wanted you to see that this is cognitively the same, and it's more information to our top part. It's a repeated pattern I've done for you. If we think about a variety of methods to encode, we can use color, flags, timestamps, stars, or we can allow our users to create their own device. Excuse me. So let's look at a data links. This is a relationship idea, and we make these models. This is one I found is pretty interesting through colors, but it used puzzle pieces to actually connect everything, which goes right to your text and beginning. If you were doing this, it might be a nice model and a way to do this. Kind of a jigsaw idea somebody came up with. Design implications have different ways of looking at them. It's a problem solving. It's a way to look at memory functions, learned knowledge, and bring it through. But more importantly, we look at mental models. These allow users to easily and readily learn a system. They're metaphors and icons for recognition. They give us similarity, our trash can, our folders, our files, like we do in the old-fashioned secretarial day. There's a general value theory to this, that we assume the way something looks and works, we experience that same principle on the computers or on the interfaces. So we're bringing real modern human cognition into our interfaces and designs for simplicity and task goal recognition. It's a cause and effect relationship. If we put a file in a trash can, or if we crumple up a piece of paper, which a lot of you love to do, and still shoot baskets across the room in your trash can and goes in, you know it goes to the trash. Cause and effect relationships. The gulf of execution and evaluation is that difference or a gap. It's a place where a bridge between the user and the interface happens to where recognition stops, or there's a reduction of cognitive differences. What do I mean by this? Well, what happens when you pick up a new interface sometimes and they're clouded? They're clogged with too much interface, or you go to somebody's website and you're searching for the shopping cart. In most cases, we know the shopping carts are usually positioned where? Up here, in the same similar places that people are starting doing to this, because the modes are the same. We recognize this is a location for it. It's interesting, but when someone changes it, maybe they put it here where the trash can is, because we think left to right, down the bottom, throw it away, out processing. But if they move that shopping cart there, do we essentially think, I'm throwing it away, because that's where the trash can should be? So it's a way of looking at information processing models and understanding this. We have to look at the time to complete the task. Is it happening too slow? Do we have bridges that need crossed? Do we need to change the model? Is there a misconception, or is something distracting us? Where we placed it doesn't work well. Why? Because maybe the color is wrong. Red means danger, green means go. Have we changed up something in our mental models, what we associate on everyday life, to be acceptable is now contradictory? This happens a lot in interfaces where designs are stopped and the users can't use them because they functionally dislike them so much they stop. And this ultimately stops what most businesses use websites for, a sale. Our mind processes things in a similar fashion. We kind of have a sensory memory that transfers that into a short-term memory. And if we really need it, we repeat it and we put it in our long-term memory, which can come back and what? Help us. The short-term really gets forgotten quick, but when we establish long-term memory, we can create a scheme or a development scheme. We might add text into this or complements ways we actually work with something. And then we can recall it. So our minds do the same thing and the same thing our interfaces do. We have to make that cognitive representation work so that everything comes to reduce that gulf or bridge or difference. We have to have a cognitive effort of comparing things and matching things in real life. We have to be able to perceive the process as the same as what the output is, what we want to happen for our users is what we're actually creating. That cognitive process is going to be with us, the human model, that we always have to think back on the issues. Will the user understand what we're trying to have happen here? Distributed cognition is simpler. Let's think of it a way we look at things now in representations. We use books and documents and the computers. We use the file screens. We give users a method to learn, and more importantly, to externalize the phenomena they're receiving. They look at used artifacts, things that we've already been using in our daily lives. A book is a book. If you want something in there to write, you might put that there. A piece of paper looks like the paper. A paper clip to clip papers together, or a staple. These are known recognitions. You also can create ways to share this. Cognitive tracing, or modifying representations to reflect these changes throughout user interfaces or stages of development, help your user to actually focus and bring through the tasks that they need to be done. So I was asked this question once when I was in doctoral school: how do you solve a problem? I was talking to a police officer in Pittsburgh, and they said that they have great computers in their car with all the information they want, but when they get outside of the vehicle, they have no information. More importantly, they would give them audio through their speakers and written information broadcast through the radios, and they would give them a computer text when there was a robbery suspect or a person. They had the ability to see all this information but never really see visual descriptions. Their interfaces were essentially clogged, and if a police officer was looking for a burglary suspect or suspect at large, and they got out of the car to walk the streets, they were lost. They had no cognitive representation or mental model applications associated with this. So I thought to them, you already have a database of past criminals, if we know who the person is, or driver's license to where we can quickly get a photo. Why don't we create an interface, because almost all the police officers had some form of smartphone, that would be integrated, secure, so that when these broadcasts go out, you could take a mugshot. And you could place this mugshot in. So the simplistic of the design was older police officers who didn't want to learn the computer skills could actually just touch the icon button on their screen, and op would pop up the user's interface to see the person. So if they're walking the street, they now have a mobile device to see the suspect. The same thing happened in the cars. Integrating two things, helping people with simpler designs of a thumb press. They get their voice radio transmission, and then they get the actual visualization. Problem solved. So I hope you guys enjoyed this cognitive processing mental models lecture. It's going to be a touch on some of the other things we'll develop through the semester, and I look forward to another great week with everyone. Get out and enjoy some sunshine. Remember to take an hour a day for yourself. Go to the gym. Go to the library and read a magazine. Read a book. Go outside and throw a ball or a football with a friend. Take a walk. Ride a bike. Life's too short, gang. Remember, we learn, but we also need breaks. Talk to you soon.